Welcome to Pseudoscience 101, the only channel where someone with lead FI in the 479 tri-type or a wannabe menace to society mocks their personality system because they do not know how to properly communicate their hyperfixation. I'm just going to get into the subject because it's extremely big and weird and full of words. So the first part of the title is blocks, so what the fuck are they and how are they made? So, fuck. How do I explain this to the 22-year-olds in my audience who don't know what sex is? When two aspects love each other very much and are in a realm where they are very close to each other, one of the aspects, called the dominant aspect, which could be either of them, enslaves the other aspect, called the supporting aspect, and uses it to further its own goals. When writing a block down, you could use the official ship name or just write the corresponding letters next to each other with the dominant aspect before the supporting one. I'm definitely getting fucked by the algorithm just as hard as I fucked your mom. Just kidding, I didn't fuck your mom. She's hideous. For the people who rightfully skip to here, blocks are made by a dominant aspect, which defines the goal, and the supporting aspect, which is the method. Here's what the goals for each aspect are. Emotions goal is to express and understand emotions. Logic's goal is to organize and figure out philosophies and sets of rules. Volition's goal is to beat other people into accepting a goal. And physics goal is to produce and maintain good sensations and circumstances. The supporting aspects are more straightforward. Basically, when supporting, emotion uses the social environment, logic uses nerd shit, volition uses willpower, and physics uses the physical environment. Since what I said probably sounds abstract and weird as fuck, I'm going to explain the block pair of logic and emotion using my channel as example, because I'm a narcissist and love talking about myself. Because I'm familiar with it and could therefore communicate it more easily. I'm not a narcissist. I personally use the categories defined by pseudoscientific personality systems to fulfill the purpose of understanding other people better, demonstrating the block artistry, or using logic to accomplish the goals of emotion. The inverse of artistry is education, and by making this video, I'm doing this block right now because I'm using shitty jokes and theatrics to explain the categories defined by the Attitudinal Psyche theory page. Note that since I'm an ELVF, the way I'm using artistry is purely to deepen my understanding, and the way I'm using education is to help the 22-year-olds in my audience who have just recently learned what sex is. It's been a while since I told a decent joke, so I'm going to explain all the other blocks by naming the block using the single funniest example of it I could think of and providing no additional spoken context. You're definitely going to want to pause and read if you want to understand what the fuck I'm thinking of with this shit, because I want to dumb down everyone who doesn't pause. Also because this video is going to be extremely fucking long and there are like 10 other blocks. Starting with EV, inspiration, playing Guilty Gear. VE, motivation, guilt tripping. EF, excitement, wholesome, loving sex. FE, enjoyment, social transition. LV, action planning, finishing my videos. VL, expertise, Wyoming does not exist. LF, precision, physics puzzle games. FL, logistics, Bitcoin. VF, command, the network of corruption and deceit which perpetuate the systems of capital, blaming marginalized communities for economic struggles to perpetuate culture wars within the masses, preventing them from fighting back against the billionaire class which profits from our fucking deaths. FE, composition, taking a shower. So now that you know all two blocks with both logic and emotion and sort of vaguely know the rest, it's time to combine them. Like aspects, when two blocks love each other very, very much and are in a realm where they are very close to each other, they create a new term called a function. Unlike aspects, both are monogamous and can only pair up with a specific other block in every single person forever. Since blocks are also incestuous, this specific block must be descended from the same two aspects, so precision, or LF, can only create a function with logistics, or FL. As incest babies, functions work differently than blocks and aspects, as instead of describing ways to interact with reality, they describe how the attitudes within a type work with each other. In other words, if two functions are made of completely different blocks, they will function fun. In the exact same way if the attitudes which make up the function have the same positions as each other. It's like reading a book versus smoking weed. They have extremely different vibes but could have the same purpose depending on who you're talking to. So how the fuck is the position of a function decide this shit? The answer is with forces, gifts, and traps. Forces are basically a way to say which block is cooler and come in two varieties, automating and restraining. Automating forces come first, and their block starts with whatever attitude comes first in your type. So if you have volition before physics, your automating block in the function would be command, or VF, and you naturally want to use physics to serve volition. For restraining forces, depending on the function, the blocks associated with the automating and restraining forces have different names, such as how the blocks in the growing edge or others negative function are called the frustration and courage blocks. However, I'm not going to use a single one of these names. This isn't to prevent information overload in the viewers, but because I've only bothered to learn the names which sound the coolest. Because of this, I'll just call them automating and restraining blocks. A trap is what happens when you treat your blocks like children by only acknowledging the existence of the automating one. By refusing to engage with the shitty parts of reality which you'll always be bad at unless it's to serve your goals, you make yourself more likable, cooler, and more gooder at grammar. A gift is when you use your automating block with the restraining block. Falling for a gift makes you a fundamentally worse person who gives up on their talents for useless shit like basic self-introspection, coming to terms with reality, and being boring. To explain how all that shit above works in a type, I will not be using ELVF, because unlike you inferior scum, I do not have a narcissistic tendency to only talk about my because this is one of the most wordy sections of the AP Theory section, and this video is already larger than my brain. Instead, I'll share a few tricks on how you could understand this shit fast to get you started. These tips are generalities which I made to understand fuller description, so they might not be entirely accurate. My first trick is to kidnap the people who made the Attitudinal Psyche website and force them to explain it to you. I'll give out names and addresses when the following conditions are met. 1. Everyone on planet Earth individually subscribes to my channel. 3. The person who wants the name and address gives me 100,000 Canadian dollars via carrier pigeon who likes being pet. And 2. I bother to research how to obtain that kind of information. My second trick is to recognize the position dichotomy in the function and look at the worst thing about it and the best thing about the opposite dichotomy, using the former as the trap and the latter as the gift. Let's use the lifepath function, which involves the self-positive dichotomy. Like me, the self-positive dichotomy is special, so it doesn't have any worse things. People who are using their self-positive aspects always know exactly what they're doing. So if someone would say self-positive emotion were to repeat a joke, it's because they fully understand that the joke is objectively funny, and also anyone who doesn't laugh is the fucking psychopath who probably eats kittens for breakfast. Like me, the self-negative dichotomy is also special, so it doesn't have any best things. People who are using their self-negative aspects don't know everything about what they're doing and could see the flaws in their methods because they exist. If someone with, say, self-negative volition were to repeat a paragraph, it's because they're scared of work and... wait. So, someone who only uses the automating lifepath block would take on those parts of the self-positive dichotomy and start acting reckless, close-minded, and narcissistic, which in case you don't know, does not describe me. Meanwhile, someone who uses the automating and restraining blocks together would start understanding the ways they aren't completely perfect in their self-positive aspects, like a fucking loser. And because I feel like this message is important, I need to address that I am being a hypocrite. In the section where I talk about the blocks of artistry and education, I say that this channel is basically education, and since I'm an ELVF, education is my life path restraining block. In my efforts to help the imbecilic masses to understand the categories which I used to understand them, I have become a fucking loser. Because of this, all you crayon-chewing menial plebeians should be grateful that I am not a narcissist. Jumping out of character for a bit, even though I know my videos are less funny now, I still want a genuine moment because I know the people at attitudinalpsyche.com watched my first video on them, so they'll probably watch this one, and I'm fine with ruining my video for everyone else just for them. So while I really like the art and the descriptions are accurate for both the types and the general theory, I have a problem with how in the type descriptions you say X is the most Y type, or X has the most Y approach to this aspect, and only explain what that means, not why that is. This is a problem because it confuses or gives wrong ideas to people with insecure logic, single observers, and people who are new to the system. Wait, that's not a fucking personality type! So how would I fix this? Well, only fixing my type because I'm a narcissist. Using my own words, ELVF has the most bitchy and self-entitled response to emotion out of all types, and while this is largely because their one-y makes them assume all their emotions are automatically good and important and everyone should fucking know them, another important attitude for this is their insecure volition. When combined with their confident emotion, their insecure volition ensures they view the subjective aspects of life in a more paranoid, vulnerable, and pissy way than other 1E types. So why are ELVFs more bitchy than EFVLs who also have 3V? I'm glad you didn't ask because I could ask instead, turning the attention towards me and my original jokes. Being a part of the verbal dichotomy, logic will never shut the fuck up. And since the flexible position also won't shut the fuck up, ELVFs who have flexible logic will have a harder time shutting the fuck up. These factors combine to make the type more openly bitchy and self-entitled in the emotional realm than every other type. Wow. Well, that was long, so that's my introduction to blocks and functions and not subtypes because fuck you! Sorry to the people at attitudinalpsyche.com, but I only noticed you made all this typology vault exclusive information last Saturday, and I've already spent 2 goddamn months on this video, so it's getting uploaded. Ask any questions you have in the comments and I'll maybe answer them if I don't die. Until I finish my next video, good riddance you disgusting pieces of shit. I'm ashamed that I, such an amazing person, has to share a galaxy with the rest of you scum. I'm not a narcissist.